Hey, One Tree Hill fans. So I just got done listening to the latest podcast, and of course, they had the fabulous Barbara Allen Woods on, who played none other than Deb. And that was super fun to listen to her insight and stories, and even had a little Barry Corbin story. Hashtag Barry Stories. So this was for episode 5, and that was All That You Can't Leave Behind. So I'm going to rewatch now, and let's see what my thoughts are in this one. So I always feel kind of conflicted in the moment with Lucas and Haley, and she's like, I'm tutoring Nathan, so he'll leave you alone. It's like, you're doing a nice thing, but then I could see like the whole boy idea, thinking like, you don't have to protect me. Or like, it's such a conflict, because it's like, you're doing a nice thing and here he was mad at you, and now it's like, I guess he can still be mad at you, but it's kind of harder to do that. And this, of course, is the infamous, Peyton running the red lights episode. And I can remember thinking, even when I watched this originally, that was so dangerous. And they were talking about how it was dangerous for them to portray that and be basically a bad example for people. But then I think, I think that's a lot of responsibility for shows to take, claim that, because it's like, there's so many bad examples set every day in TV, movies, books, the world, the news, even I mean, look at Instagram and TikTok. How many stupid challenges are there out there? So it's like, I think people are going to do what they're going to do regardless. But I do agree that there probably should have been a saying, and not a saying, a disclaimer on this episode, because, dude, that's really dangerous. I do agree. I do love that correlation, though, when you see Lucas reading the paper with Peyton's artwork and the famous red light artwork, and then he sees her running the lights. Although it always was funny to me how you hear all the horns, like, honking, but you never see any cars. So it was funny how they said they had like all the streets blocked. And again, I think a disclaimer would have been wise. Okay, so speaking of going back to how Lucas could have been mad at Haley, but I like how they handled it, because it really showed a really mature way of, especially a teenage guy, handling this, because he was just like, I really appreciate it, but leave the, team stuff to me. And I really think he should have stopped right there, because then you see him go on, now you can stop tutoring Nathan. And she's like, I can't do that. I promised him, and she'd be like, if I did that, I'd be as bad as you think he is. Or, it was a really good way to word it. But I just think it was just so funny, because I'm like, I really wish he would have stopped at the whole, let me handle the team. I totally forgot about the news article, saying how, oh, Dan Scott's 2 sons got the basketball gene. It's like, I totally forgot about that. I do like how Nathan's like, we're just one big happy family. Oh my God, when Nathan goes up to Peyton in the hall, like, he forgive me? Like, his eyes, like those puppy dog eyes, he was really good at that. Okay, so Peyton's freak out, at rehearsal. I can see why people really disliked her, especially when you're like younger. You can really kind of be like, oh, why are you being such a downer? But as an adult, I totally get where Peyton's coming from now, because it's like, why should this matter? Why should all these seemingly meaningless things matter? And she's just angry and hurting. So it's like, I totally get it. It's so interesting to watch these things, years later, because you really do have such a different perspective. And Dan can always be relied upon to be the one we love to hate, because he's such a jerk to Keith in the garage. And then he's just like, oh, hey kid, meaning Lucas, you have an obligation to the family name too. Don't blow it. He's just like, you're right. You don't deserve my name. Oh, it's so... Ugh. Do you have to say, I always am conflicted when Lucas says he wants to change his name from Scott. But it did always beg to question in my mind why she would give him that name. And I mean, I know, Keith was a big part of that decision, but it still kind of surprising. Once again, I must applaud Barry Corbin, aka Whitey. No one can give a better gut check or a better comeback, especially to Dan. When it comes to Dan, he just gives it right back to him better than anybody. Well, until Karen gets mad. Oh, and Deb too. Deb can really hold her ground with him as well. Oh my god. Okay, we're talking about the Scott name. And I tell you, Karen told that story so amazing. And it's just like, okay, I get why you named him Scott now. Like, once we get the story, it all makes sense. But it's like, no one could tell that story quite the way Karen does. Brava. Okay, like, does anybody else get emotional when Whitey finds Peyton at the cemetery and he's telling her about her mom? And it's just, oh my god, it's such a sweet, endearing, emotional moment. But I do love the humor when Peyton's like, what are you doing here? Are you making a reservation? I mean, that's what's amazing about this show. Like, even as emotional as it can get, they still find a way to give you the little humor, Oh my god, the moment between Nathan and Haley. And I swear to God, those puppy dog eyes. I can't get over it. And he looks so young, and knowing he was like 17 and like everybody else was older than him, and it's just like, oh my god, you were really adorable. Like, I totally get why girls would fall for him. Like, I get it, okay? And it's just so cute seeing Haley correct Nathan, and she's like, Peyton and I, me and Peyton. Like, I love it. Oh my god, Peyton in the car with Lucas after running more red lights. And it was just such an emotional moment. And while they were never necessarily my favorite couple, I didn't hate them. I think I disliked the Peyton, Lucas, Brooke triangle because there was just so much strife there. But I'm feeling it right now. I think I'm getting what all the Peyton Lucas shippers see. I have to say bravo to Keith for doing that whole, you can be ashamed of me and Lucas, but what makes you think we're not ashamed of you, Dan? Because you can really see Dan's like emotion in that moment where he really got him, Good for you, Keith. Even though it doesn't feel like a necessarily big moment, the moment in this episode when Haley's, grading Nathan's paper and he gets his 81 and he's talking about Peyton, and even though he's talking about another girl, it's kind of funny because I feel like there's like a real like kind of ice-breaking moment between them, and I think like Haley it's a very slow progression with Haley and Nathan at first, and it's just funny because it's just very little by little, and you see it, and I think they're all very significant moments, tiny moments that become significant later. I honestly wish there had been more moments with Peyton and Whitey because I felt like she needed a more solid figure in her life. And I think Whitey could have helped. Like, I mean, just be a more, solid male figure in her life because, her dad was always gone. Her mom had died. And, she didn't have siblings. And, her best friend was Brooke. So Brooke wasn't always the best influence. Not at the beginning. Oh man, it's such a loaded moment between Lucas and Haley when she's just like, and she just is, I've never heard anybody speak so like excitedly about tutoring. First off, it's adorable. And then it's just like, she's like, I am just tutoring him. And it's just like, no, you're not. Okay, you don't know that right now, but we know what's coming. Another heartfelt moment with Keith and Lucas when Keith is like, trying to get Lucas not to change his name. It's like, it's so conflicting. I see it from both sides. I really do. Okay, so who else wants to use the line that Peyton used on Lucas when Lucas told her, I've been thinking about you? And she's like, try a cold shower. Okay, so when Lucas tells Peyton he would gladly erase Dan if he could bring back Peyton's mom, that's a really sweet thing to say, but it's a really intense thing to say as well. Like, especially for a teenager, but I know Lucas is very sensitive. He's a poet. I get it. But it's like, does anybody ever know a teenage boy that's ever said anything remotely like that? Like, I haven't. In the moment with Deb and Dan, when he's reminiscing about his days on the basketball court, you see that light, you see what she saw in him. You know, you even see what Karen saw in him before he became evil. But when he says the whole, oh, it was different, when she asks if it was better, I mean, it's like, oh, yeah, now I remember. Why you're a jerk. But you do see that chemistry between them. I mean, you really do. And then you see it immediately how Nathan is just like Dan when he comes to Peyton and he's like being so sweet. And then he ends it with this whole, I'll see you there. Like, so sure she's going to show up. Just, ugh. Keith is very subtle but very good in all of his hits towards Dan. I'm just a stand-in. One of the boys doesn't have a father. So when Haley's like in the stands and she's like, Lucas, hey Scott, and Nathan and Lucas both look, and Lucas has got this like really kind of not great look on his face, and she's like I feel like that's foreshadowing a little bit, like how her life is with the two of them always in the future. But it is funny that Nathan does have his own little hits towards Dan too, because when Dan's like, oh, I got a bigger applause than you, and Nathan's like, oh, is your hearing aid turned up too loud? Okay, so I forgot that like Lucas was like spinning the ball on his finger, and then like Nathan's all like putting it in his shirt and acting silly. It's like, I totally didn't see that before. Dan is gonna go in there to the boys' locker room and just be so, oh, he's such a prick. I mean, he's just so mean to like everybody. And he's like, dude, okay, we get it. You're trying to relive your glory days. Oh my God, take like a bucket of chill pills, okay? Thank God for Keith. Cause like Keith is just like, hey, he makes a joke of, he makes the kids laugh. Like, I'm like, Keith, I love you. So I'm going to say this, like, when we see Peyton almost get hit at one of her many red light runnings, they did mention how, you know, the show didn't put Peyton in therapy because there's a lot of things that happened to Peyton, both young and in teenagedom and later. And that definitely would have been a great choice to get her somewhere where she did have an anchor, because she certainly didn't in this role. But I was thinking about that, and you know, a lot of shows back then really didn't talk about therapy. You know, to my knowledge, at least the shows that I watched, no one really had that as an option. So it is funny to kind of see the contrast of that, you know, then versus now. So here's the question. We see Lucas, like, you know, being like, I saw you with Nathan, hugging Nathan, you know, and she's like, he got a good grade. It was nothing. And then he sees the bracelet. So it's kind of an interesting idea to think, I mean, even though we knew that, you know, like, I think at this point, Haley wasn't really consciously admitting that maybe she was, like, kind of, you know, intrigued by Nathan more than just being a tutor. But I think it's interesting to look at the fact that, like, Lucas, in a weird way, planted that seed further, made her really question, do I like him? Was that intentional by the writers? That's an interesting thought, because now that I'm rewatching this again, like, I'm just like, gee, I never thought of this before. It's like Lucas was kind of almost the architect of this pairing, if you will, because he planted that seed of doubt in Haley's mind of, oh, do I really like him? Interesting. Oh, when Dan's like, just checks out, you know, Nathan and just knocks him down. He's like, I couldn't give you that winning shot. And then you see, you know, Lucas pick him up. He's like, you want to beat him? He's like, yeah, but I want to do it on my own. It's like, for a split second, you think, oh, here comes Dan, you know, pushing the boys together. And of course, Nathan is stubborn, like his father. Nathan letting his dad win. He's like, you didn't beat me. You never will. Very Dan, but yet very Nathan in his own way. Oh my God, Luke is saying he's going to keep the name, and he was proud to have Keith as his dad for the night. And it's just like, so beautiful and heartwarming, and it's so bittersweet because we know what's coming. I enjoyed that scene at the with Nathan and Peyton, and he's like, I knew you'd come tonight. I'm glad you came. I knew you would. She's like, you know, my mom died. I'm so glad she said that, because it's like, you knew he didn't know. And then it's like, oh, well, then why did you come if you didn't come here for me? And then Lucas walks out, and it's just such a good moment because she doesn't say another word. She just looks at him and turns away. It's like, get it, girl. And of course, we don't know that she came there for Lucas because she walks right past him. But it was a good cinematic moment, and a moment that made him think, be outside of himself, being Nathan. Because it's like, I love just how she kind of takes her power back in like the most quiet of ways sometimes, you know. And also I wanted to point out that the official name of this episode is actually different on Hulu. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but it's entitled Where I End and You Begin, or Where You Ended. It is different though. It's like Where I End and You Begin, and it's just, I didn't understand why this had a different name on Hulu, but the official name is the one on the card and in the title on this video. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hi to my new subscribers. Thanks for being here, and I will see you next week.